Maybe the next update to keep things brief would maybe on the project cost. So if you could flip the slides.
Could I ask a question on the last slide? Sure. The dimension of the future water main connection,
Yeah.
are we actually laying pipe in?
Right now, we're just preserving a corridor to likely directionally drill install it.
Okay, you could directionally bore a pipe that large? Okay.
So that's, I mean, that's the, we've gone back and forth, but we have yet to, like, invest in infrastructure for the city, right? We rely, when our policy's been, when developments come in, they address the infrastructure at that time. So we just wanted to make sure we preserved a corridor to be able to efficiently install it. It's going to be outside of the main roadway, underneath the trail, and we believe we can minimize future impacts if and when it ever comes in.
But would that section be paid by the city, though? That wouldn't be impacted by development? Just
It all
that
depends
section
on
of
what the
pipe.
development, it all depends on the development. Or it could be added in the future if the neighborhood was, if sewer and water came to the Hunter's neighborhood. It's just preserving a corridor for the future.
So we won't have to extend it when Gagne comes in?
So our approach when a development comes in, we do a feasibility study.
Yep.
We evaluate what their plan is, if they need it for fire flows, if they need it for other things, it's typically part of the development cost. If they don't need it and it's just an ask from us, then it becomes out of our TLAC fund. So we evaluate those developments when they come in. Does that make sense? So we just are preserving that corridor to keep our options open. That's consistent with past policy.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm wondering is, if Gagne comes in, the Lakeview development piece, where would their water come from? Would it come from Tavera, or would it come down this way? Because at one time, we talked about extending through there and looping the water system through there.
Correct, yep. So likely, there's at least usually a minimum of 2 connections. Sometimes there could be 3. We always stub it to future areas. But likely, well, there is a stub at Tavera.
Yeah.
So they would likely pick up at Tavera, and then likely they would pick up somewhere from the east, but it really depends on the modeling, their uses, the intensity, which we evaluate later. So it's likely that this corridor is used at some point. So that's why we wanted to preserve it.
I'm just wondering if it's beneficial to put the pipe in now before we build a trail versus doing it, but if you say we can directionally bore it.
I think staff's recommendation at this point would be to just preserve it,
Okay.
knowing that we could drill it. It could be a future conversation that we bring back forward, but I think right now, just again, consistent with city practice, we recommend preserving the corridor. But that's certainly something we could consider. If we did that now, it would be a city cost. Versus later, it may or may not be a city cost.
Oh, so at a future point, if they needed a second access because of water flow, we could have them incur that cost?
Potentially. It all depends on the application and.
Okay.
So we're preserving our options. We can certainly include it, but it would then be a city cost.
Right, yeah.
Right.
You got it.
I think since we can drill it.
Yeah, and because we can, it would require drilling, probably. Or it could physically be done and you just replace a longer stretch, but that wouldn't be, it's a future conversation, really.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing any economies of scale there, doing it together.
Yeah, I mean, if we needed to do it today and there was a reason to do it today, we'd certainly include it in the project.
Okay.
So from that standpoint, yes, you're correct. Because we don't know what's gonna happen, we just wanna preserve it and keep the options open. So you're correct, if we knew we had a need there, right, then we would certainly put it in with the project. We're preserving our options at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Makes sense. I'd like to continue with the.
And with the project, essentially, we're accounting for it. So, from an engineering standpoint, we have to have certain offsets from storm sewer and things like that for that future water main corridor. In addition, with the project, I didn't mention this earlier, but we're planning and working with the private utility companies to lower their utility lines underground. And so we also need to account that space at that water main. So here's the slide with the estimated costs here at the time at which we're at final design and ready to go out for bids. Kind of in the same neighborhood as we were before. It's crept up a little bit, and we've used recent bids that we've received to come up with this this cost estimate here. This is a project cost estimate, so it includes both construction, contingency, and overhead amounts. So it's an all-encompassing cost here that we've shown.
Is this total cost, not including cost sharing with Medina and development?
This is
That's
total
correct.
cost, project
Okay.
cost, yep, on a comprehensive level.
Okay. So do we have something that shows Corcoran contribution?
We don't have final, we're still working through several agreements.
Okay.
So if it's a comprehensive project, if you look at project partners, it's the municipalities,
Yep.
it's the adjacent developments that have some, like, projects that they're already required to do that could be absorbed into a comprehensive project. And the benefit there of all project partners in good faith work towards a larger project, the benefit is we have an LRIP grant that can offset some of the costs. We have potentially Hennepin County, we think we have good momentum to have Hennepin County split the intersection at 116 with us. Those funding sources are only eligible if it's a comprehensive project. So we are working with all of our project partners to finalize agreements. One of the benefits of finalizing an actual number and getting a bid is helping everyone get comfortable with the final number.
Yeah,
So-
I just wanted to be clear that that 7.9 million wasn't a scary number that the
No.
taxpayers were thinking they're going to.
No, and we're not, we spent all the money, we're just going out for bids. So we've got this point, bids could be crazy high, we could not have agreements, we could have to modify scope. I think there's good faith from all parties to achieve a comprehensive project, but to finalize that scope and cost, we need the bids.
Yep.
And we think bundling it in a larger scale will help everyone's numbers come down and all their obligations, so. There will be, Corcoran, I think, has 3 or 4 agreements we'll have to present you before we award bid. We will not enter a bid until we have those agreements in place, so. This is a significantly complicated cross corridor, so that's where we stand today and recommend, pursuing bids. Like I said, to get the actual number now on a real bid that we can hold for 60 days is pennies on the dollar of what we spent to get to this point, so it's.
Yep. Thank you.
So the next steps here, and I kind of mentioned this here a few minutes ago, but to consider the resolution to approve the plans and then authorize advertisement for bids. Then kind of coming up here, looking at headed into the future a little bit, obviously we're going to be doing the project bidding. Kevin alluded to some of these agreements that are being worked on between the two cities. But once the bids come in, those costs can be calculated and some of the splits will be known more exact. And then we're also planning potentially an open house or a virtual meeting here in April or May to talk to some of the residents about the project. It is intended to be constructed in 2023 and then have the wear course be done here next year, early summer. There has been a freeze-thaw cycle.
How far out are
But
we?
with that, I guess I'll leave it up for any questions you might have or any other discussion.
Sorry, keep interrupting. How far out are we noticing for a open house? Or is it just gonna be the 500 feet, or is it gonna be?
We haven't really thought
Yeah, we-
about that. I mean, I think it's going in the newsletter at some point
Yeah.
possibly,
Okay.
so it's not like it's whoever we want to invite really, so it's definitely the people along the corridor, definitely the neighborhoods like Hunter and Hackmore that are impacted because there's only one access.
Yeah.
So it would be a broad swath and likely included on our website. I mean, it's whoever we think is impacted by the project.
Okay.
We just want to once we get the bids in and finalize everything, then we can kind of formalize what the engagement process is. But we thought it was important for folks to know that we do want to talk about the project and keep the public informed about the impacts that
Yeah.
there will be.
And probably even a joint session, right? Maybe, we can talk about, is it 2 separate ones or a joint session, can the contractor be there, so. All things that we'll come back to you on when we authorize a project.
Right. Okay.
Jim, did you need anything?
I have a question
I
about the
think it was
design
Susan.
too.
Yeah, go for it.
So one of the original designs showed the trail on the north side of Hackmore off 116 looping north into the Gagne property and then coming back down close to the road. And this is just a straight shot along the road.
Mm-hmm.
When did that change and why was the change made?
That initial plan was just to show like an objective to try to just kind of create a unique trail experience.
Yeah.
When we evaluated that property and some of the wetland components and some of the complications with stormwater, we just felt like it was in the best interest to not make that connection.
Okay.
We do have a bubble out on the east end in the Walcott Glen neighborhood where it made more sense to us. So that was kind of a goal to evaluate, and we just didn't feel like it made the most sense to loop it in through that area, so.
Okay. All right. That was my only question.
Sure. Any other questions? Hmm? Okay.
Do we want silo-shaped crosswalk bars?
John? John thinks about it for a second.
We need real silos. You can't fake that.
Okay, if there's nothing else besides silos, I will make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-19, approving plans and specifications for the Hackmore Road Improvement Project and ordering the advertisement of bids.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. I just wanted to say thank you to staff, Gus, Kevin, everyone that's been involved. Maggie, you've been involved at the financial side of things, I'm sure, and council. This is a big project. It's exciting to get to this point in it. And also thank the City of Medina and their staff and council. They passed the same thing, I believe unanimously 2 nights ago, so.
Tuesday.
So, yeah, we're getting close. The road needs it, so it's exciting.
And a lot of kudos to Kevin. He's put in a lot of hours working with.
Yes, he has. I've seen him.
And working with the development on it. We've been on a lot of meetings, but Kevin's done a lot of the behind the scenes work.
And WSB too.
And
Yes,
WSB,
yes, yes. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. On to 9B, approving job description and appointment of planning technician.
We put that
We
in.
did that.
Move that in consent.
You're right, we did, so never mind. 9C, Northeast Water Supply Treatment and Storage Tower Engineering Construction Administration proposes.
Oh, I can take this, sorry.
Oh, I
I
was
was
like,
writing some
sorry.
notes, so apologize for that, Mayor and Council. Before you, we have construction administration proposals for the 2 water supply projects in Northeast, the treatment plant site, the water tower site, projects were approved, contracts were approved at the end of January, so we worked with the engineering team that designed the projects and had a lot of conversations about how to set up these budget scopes, and really gave the guidance to them to prepare a kind of a value-based level of service, which I put in there equates about 70% coverage. That doesn't mean 70% of the week they're out there. It means target the key stuff at 70%. And if things are going good, we're gonna work with them to modify that, and hopefully we're on the high side of that. But that's really what we have in here. It's not full-time inspections, it's strategic inspections, and it's really depending on how the contractor performs to some degree too. These are significant investments for our community and certainly critical infrastructure, and current staff doesn't really have much time, nor the technical experience for treatment plants. So we think that this is good value. I did mention in here, as we're reviewing the department's comprehensive plan, to kind of consider separating into utilities and streets as we onboard this type of system and deliver water. If we expedite that or expedite a hire that's dedicated to the utility department, if that's where it ends up going, we could potentially inject them into working with the design team and offset that, and then they learn and grow with the plant as it's being built. So there is benefit to that, and it's certainly a staff objective to try to get in place. So hopefully that draws, anything we do there draws that down, maybe in year 2 of the process. So that's certainly what we're gonna work towards and bring that information back to you. That being said, the numbers in front of you, engineering team here with Stantec can answer any specific questions. You do have options to consider other RFPs. We don't recommend that because of the complexity in them doing the design and contracts are awarded, but you do technically have that option if we want to expedite an RFPs. With that, would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Kevin?
You anticipated my question. I like the idea of having the opportunity to have somebody, or maybe more than one person if necessary, that becomes permanent city employees and allows us to benefit from this construction phase and training and development versus outsourcing everything. So to the degree that we could use our future org structure to do this work, I think that would be a more efficient use of funds than just paying an outside firm to do it on a contract basis.
I agree. I think there's certainly opportunity there to do some of that. Some of the stuff is specialized enough where we would still need the consultant, but certainly we could grow into that where they're partnering with those individuals and there would be mutual benefit to onboard that person and learn the plan. So I concur with that statement, and that's a very likely recommendation.
Were these numbers factored into some of the other numbers that we saw before about the cost of?
Yes, they're
facilities?
in line. Off the top of my head, they might be 10% higher than like the initial budget mid-year of last year.
Okay, so we would have saw these in the numbers that we saw
Yeah.
before.
Yep, is that
Okay.
correct? Is that, yes, about 10% higher from the mid-year last year mark when we did the larger initiation before final design.
Okay.
And at that point, we just made an estimate on level of service. I think they assumed maybe 50%, from my recollection, so I just wanted to ensure we had that protection. Now, we can certainly keep Jessica involved at the pace of where we're trending in line with completion, if that's of importance. I understand it's a huge number. I just didn't want to I wanted to make sure we were covered if we had problems, because it is a critical piece that we want to make sure is constructed right.
It
So
was about 3 years of work, right?
it's 2-year bill though, yeah, so
Yeah.
you're talking about 2 years. So, yeah, it's significant. I think there's things we can work with the team on to reduce. It's a tough projection because you're there based on another person's schedule to some degree, so
Yeah.
this is their best effort working with me to provide a initial plan. So.
Best effort, high-end number?
Yeah, I don't anticipate more than this unless we have a catastrophe out there, and you guys will hear about it in advance of us ever going above this number.
Yeah.
But knock on wood, that's not the case, and we can invest some of this funds into a staff member that position that we've created that then learns the facility, which is huge. If you can be there as it's being built and understand it, it's going to pay dividends when you basically, operate the plant, so.
Any other questions? No? Not, I'll entertain a motion to approve construction administration services for the Northeast Water Supply projects in the amount of $1,107,560 as outlined in the proposals from Stantec.
So moved. Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Alan, you're crushing it tonight. All these questions.
a good question.
Gotta get the money's worth out.
I guess, right.
Okay, on to 9D, which is a review of our 2023 goals and measurables.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. We brought back a outline of our short-term goals in February, and staff has drafted some measurables to help us reach those goals that are outlined in the packet. And I'd be happy to spend some time going through each of them, or and take any suggestions council might have on any of the different items. Otherwise, we'd like to move forward with adopting those and then bring back, I do have in the schedule for us to bring back regular updates a couple times throughout the next part of the year to really make progress on these goals.
Any,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can I I want to address the core strategy of maintaining excellence in safety and security for our community.
Which page is that on?
2 of 3,
Thank you.
short-term goals.
Okay.
I want to, because number 2, deploy automatic license plate readers for use by police and public safety. It's a definitive instruction. It basically says, it's almost a we shall, and it says, deploy automatic license plate readers for use by police, public safety. It's a decision. I think we need to either take that off of the list for the time being, or put, learn about, or, evaluate, yes, I was gonna say contemplate. Evaluate deploying automatic license plate readers for use by police, public safety, rather than just do it as if it's an instruction to go ahead and do that.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'd be in favor of that second one that you said, evaluate.
Yeah.
Language change.
That's what,
More so than the first.
yeah, I was trying to find the right word.
Gotcha.
Alan, again,
Alan to the rescue.
yes, yes. Think about.
Jeremy, did you, or Dean?
Dean was
Oh,
raising his hand.
Go ahead.
I didn't have any.
Oh.
You sure?
Not yet.
All right. I didn't think we were deploying. I thought we were looking at, and the cost was a concern at that time and those kind of things. Jessica's raising her hand.
So the short-term goal was to, we had worded it during our strategic planning to deploy them. But the measurable I was looking at was to create a financial and deployment plan. So we would get that buy-in on how are we going to fund it, as well as where it would go. So that in discussion with Matt, we were trying to come up with, we'd present a plan to you, not necessarily.
Yeah.
I think the language for the short-term goal could be updated to evaluate. And if we're comfortable with still creating that plan for what deployment could look like, is something that we can move forward with.
I think that would come with further education on it.
Yes, we can evaluate and review options and bring forward a plan.
I'd be,
Is there already a regional system in place, Matt?
Yes, there are several cities more south of us, but there's other ones, several within the metro that are on certain systems that have the capacity with appropriate authorizations to share that information. So in the earlier connection, that if you had for instance, an Amber Alert or a stolen vehicle, that is, if it traveled through those communities, you could kind of at least understand which directions it's going and be able to intercept, for instance, a stolen vehicle. Or if we all of a sudden had a construction site theft last night, but other communities had experienced that and had identified a suspect vehicle, and this would seem to match that scenario, we could at least have a direction to look instantly. So the short answer is yes.
Because the last several summers, there have been several instances where people have had cars stolen out of their garages or driveways, and they joyride for a while, and oftentimes they'll use those vehicles in commission of additional crimes. So having that ability to identify and intercept early, before damage is done, seems like it would be a strong, compelling interest. I'm not unsympathetic to the idea that we don't want to collect unnecessary information, but it appears that there's adequate controls in place. So
that's,
I think we should certainly consider it.
Yeah.
Maybe cost is a factor.
All I'm asking for is a consideration rather than
Right.
it may end up being that we do it. I especially pay attention to the Fourth Amendment considerations and the legal aspects of it. And then also, like, you get into in theory, you could have and I'm not suggesting that anyone's saying we should do this, but the draconian model would be you have a license plate reader on every corner in Corcoran, and it feels like we live in a police state. No one's suggesting we do that, but if we did have if there's a balance of measuring everybody and tracking everybody, and in theory, having every crime be solvable, because we know every single person that's ever been in Corcoran and where they've been, and time stamping our whole lives. So like that's the extreme end of something like this, or not paying attention at all. My ask is that we dig into the legal aspects of it. We still may land here. I just want to make sure that I'm comfortable with the constitutional and legal issues, even if other people do it. That doesn't mean that I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that
I might be okay with it. I want to hear about it.
makes sense. So I think first step would be to change the language, like you suggested, to evaluate.
Yeah, and then the measurable is evaluation, and if we agree, then we create a financial and deployment plan. But I would think we'd want to evaluate it first before we create a financial plan, for sure. I mean, it doesn't make sense depending on where we land.
Or we could get some cost estimates and whatnot.
As you
Even
guys,
if it was free, if it violated if we felt like it crept into privacy issues.
There's your privacy's gone
Yeah.
once you signed on.
I was gonna-
Yeah, but the state doesn't own this data. It's a
But they can
state
get it with a
issue.
warrant,
You can get it with a warrant.
just like,
I know, but it's the warrant thing,
Yep.
the Fourth Amendment. I'm not saying that, I'm saying it should be a consideration, and we should look at it.
We can vet that in the evaluation process.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with all of that. Matt, I know you and I had a long conversation about it, and your reservations about this, and I know you have spent a lot of time digging into this. I agree a lot with Corinne on all of these things, and I think that was some of the conversation that you and I had about too much data out there is not a good thing. Alan just brought up the fact that I'm tracked every day when I get in my car, and I hook it to my car, and it tells me I'm going to work. How does it know that? It's all repetition, it's all there. We live in a place that a lot of this data is easily accessible with an appropriate warrant, appropriate terms and stuff. I think I told you, would it help our police officers solve issues and problems without infringing on and going down to the detail? Like Corinne is mentioning, I think it's storing some data, but I like the way you were talking, and it put my mind at ease, but I don't want to deploy, I want to look at it. I
We
think
shouldn't have
it's
this
analyzing and
conversation
stuff like that.
tonight, just on the fly.
Yep.
Puts Matt in a bad spot, and also we have to learn about the other side,
Yeah.
and figure it out.
So do we have consensus to make the changes that John was talking about? I think we all are on the same page about wanting to tweak that like that. Yes? John's looking concerned.
No, I was the one who had the suggestion.
That's what I
think
figured,
it's
right?
great.
You just had a look on your face. Jeremy?
I can live with that, yeah.
Okay.
So if you're comfortable, we'll make those changes
Perfect.
to both the short-term goal and change the measurable to evaluate license plate readers, and then that'll be the
Perfect.
measurable at this time.
Sounds good.
can I provide one more comment there?
Yeah.
So just as you begin to formulate what that could look like for the city, the cost was brought up and the policy and privacy concerns were brought up. The cost of the system being used in neighboring communities is $2,500 per year per camera, and that's for the data management and all of the maintenance and all in, all done. So you can extrapolate that out by order of magnitude if, at the level of deployment. Also, I had, as you mentioned, a lot of Corinne's points were ones that, concerns that I've had, and our city has never been rapid to adopt them, to be on the cutting edge, but without the appropriate safeguards in place. Body cameras are another example where when they first came out, we didn't get them because until the state statute was at a place where we believed there was appropriate privacy considerations for our residents, and I think we are monitoring that with these as well. So I have already sent all of you a link with a shortcut kind of explaining what the Minnesota laws are, when the audits are required, the maximum data retention and what the maximum allowed by the state is, and we certainly have the ability to craft our local policies and procedures to a level of comfort by the, if it, in a more restrictive fashion if we decided to. So as you begin to visualize that, you should have a good start on some of the data and costs as you start thinking.
Fair. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Just wanted to continue. Is there anything else? I forgot where you left
Any other
off.
Changes, I think we just need a motion and a second to approve.
Did you get through all the?
Were there any other ones
I
that we
did-
wanted
I-
changes?
Don't think so.
I had a question on page 1, core strategy on providing diverse community amenities, recreational opportunities. We had a measurable number 1, hire an engineering consultant to assist in outlining processes for park creation and construction, which can be utilized to develop city park and dedicated parks. Do we mean hire a, engineering consultant, I assume means we're hiring a consultant from a firm, not bringing somebody on to staff?
Not necessarily bringing someone on to staff, but just to help with, in order to, if we do want to move forward more rapidly, it might make sense to have someone help us outline what does our scorecard look like. In particular, the RFQ for City Park is just a pretty big design. Getting that outlined and creating those pieces that will help us more quickly in the future develop each park is really where we'd want it to be project specific, and Kevin and I had just talked about that we think that would give us a template for doing that, and it could give us an opportunity to potentially look at other firms, as we've talked about with RFPs and things like that. So it met a couple things that we've talked about, but really moving towards that, if we want to more rapidly construct things, creating that template for us.
Okay. Maybe for future years, it would make sense to think about, at what point do we need somebody who would be on staff and is geared toward developing and maintaining capital structure? It's probably too soon for this year. We know we didn't budget for that, but maybe in 2024.
It might be too soon in terms of what we have. I could see this role being more of a, not necessarily short-term, but not permanent,
Yeah.
you know.
More project specific.
Right, when we have a couple, and one in particular massive project, that would be a large chunk of what they're doing. But at a certain point, when we do have, you know, enough different facilities for that to be a full-time job, then yeah, essentially we should look at bringing someone in on staff. I agree. So are you comfortable with that understanding of it? Okay, any other changes? No? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adopt the measurables for the 2023 goals as amended.
Can I want to just, I want to ask a question on that, what we just talked about.
Sure.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries.
So we hire an engineer, we meet with Parks and Trails Commission to outline a park standards document, and then create a plan for trail maintenance to bring forward the parks and trails to the end of the year. But their first strategic objective is to plan for a multi-seasonal, multi-trail use park system. And the second is provide high-quality parks in plural that are unique, innovative, and accessible. And I struggle to see where meeting with Parks and Trails Commission in a work session to outline park standards, like I get that part, but these don't necessarily, there's no plan still for how we actually plan for and provide multi-seasonal and multi-use trail and park systems. Like, part of this discussion was to be, how do we have more parks? I think, as a, per our populate, less, we want to have more parks per population, and I'm not sure the measurables actually get us to the strategic objective. There's not a connector to me to the plan for the multi-seasonal and multi-use trail and park systems. Those measurables don't measure that.
Well, I think measurable number 3 ties into the multi-use plan because of planning for trail maintenance and what our decisions for what those trails are gonna be used for versus, you know, are they gonna sit dormant during the winter, or are they gonna be used for winter recreational activities? Or are we plowing them for walking, or what are we doing in that regard? But I think that's where that one ties.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would agree.
But I think John has a good point that we did have a conversation maybe 2 months ago about do we have enough of the right kinds of parks in the right areas in the city? And there isn't anything on here that talks about revisiting the distribution and size of planned parks and whether we need to add any. So maybe that should be another measurable.
So,
Have a discussion or a work
I don't know.
session.
I'm not asked, maybe this doesn't, we can bring it up a different time. I don't know if we need to change this document based on that. I just don't see the connection, but that can be my own thing. I'll have to think about when I get home. Like, we don't need to have a big, long discussion, because I think I'm kind of going off on it. I'm going a little bit sidetracked here.
okay.
So,
Well, so we could do two things. We could send it back to staff with some comments and bring it up at another time when we have some time to think on it, or we could just approve it as is and bring up that discussion separately at another time.
I want to approve it as is with the different language that we talked
That
about.
we talked about on the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since we did this 2 months ago, I don't want to change the language of that specific goal.
Gotcha.
I think it's vague enough too that it can be flexible.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so too, yeah. Sorry about that.
No, that's still good conversation. So I'll again entertain the motion to, got my exact verbiage here, adopt measurables for the 2023 goals.
So moved.
You have a second? Perfect. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. On to 9E, which is the utility base rate discussion.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In December of 2022, the 2023 fee schedule was adopted, and in January of 2023, the REU credit policy was adopted. Since adoption of both the fee schedule and the credit policy, non-residential properties have voiced concerns on the increase on the utility base rates. So staff is looking for further feedback from council, and if council would like, staff can look into alternative for the base rates.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone, Dean, I know you and I.
My biggest concern, and I know we've got a few of our industrial folks here and stuff. The 3 bills that I've seen, they go an entire, multiple years in the range of $70 to $75. In their very first bill, come out in January, and their very first bill is $305. And the usage changed, and I didn't see these calculations to raise that much. I don't buy that. The cost is way too big a jump, and I wasn't paying enough attention to understand that much of a jump. And then I know we have the credit application that they can apply for to get their money back because they aren't using enough. I'm one that I want a bill, and it's done. I'm gonna use my own thing, and it's not water, but I have my own well and those kind of things. I got my garbage disposal company sending me a bill 3 months ago. It was $155. It's 3 months. I get the bill today, and it's jumped to $215. There's nothing that's gonna make me happy about that. I can't imagine a 400% increase on a water bill being that much, especially when we've established 2 or 3 years of a bill that's been around $75. And to only have, I think you had said, Maggie, 3 of the folks are in that range, the rest are whatever. I don't understand why those 3 jump that high. I can't put it together. When I go and look at Maple Grove, which is where this water is coming from, and sewer, compatible companies, automobile service companies, 3 of them, their bills are less than $100. And how is ours 300 for this? Are we marking it up that much? Is Maple Grove charging us that much more for sewer and water that these bills gotta be there? I wanna talk about
I would say one thing, and I don't know what for sure you saw with the Maple Grove bills and how much detail. I know the way they structure it, there's kind of a lot of different fees that we don't charge. So if you looked at what might seem the most similar part of the bill, it might seem like that big of a gap. And we might be charging more, but I would guess that the gap isn't as large as it might seem because there's a lot of
I'm
4 or 5
just gonna
different
go
fees
down to the
together.
nuts and bolts, a $75 bill to $300 bill from
Mm-hmm.
one month to the next. Have we been that wrong in what we've charged? And it's only, like I said, we're down to 3 of these properties in our industrial park, and they aren't using that much water. I see the usage from ProTech, and they're using about 3,500 to 4,200 gallons a month. And sewer is proportional to that, I assume. I don't see how we can raise that bill 400%.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
Counselor Camp. I think when we looked at the fee schedule, we were trying to find an equivalent unit, and we thought that SAC might be a good option for us. As we're hearing today, that we might need to look at alternative options, if we need to look at some other different options for that. When Maggie presented the SAC option, it was based on something that is universally known in, we get a SAC determination, each business gets a SAC determination. And so you're not wrong that there is a big increase, because SAC is based on sewer availability charges. So it's something that I think, as Maggie said, we'd be happy to look into and propose something alternative, if that's the feedback we're getting from council. We do think that when we set up the system, and we will want to set up the system in order to allow for us to get when there are big users, to make sure that we're getting those
I agree.
residential
I
equipment.
absolutely agree to that.
So maybe it's a opportunity for us to come back to the drawing board and look at maybe the way that we're doing it today is not, maybe we need to reevaluate it.
So again, please educate me. I'm obviously not the smartest, sharpest knife in the drawer kind of deal, but these folks have paid to put the sewer and water lines in under the roads. They've already paid that fee. They paid the fee for hooking up. And now this extra charge is maintenance to this. I don't understand how some of them, their bill stayed at $75, $80, and 3 of them jumped to 300. Doesn't, the
Yes.
dog don't hunt for me, I'm
Oh.
sorry.
So we were using SAC unit as a residential equivalent unit because when we do have to reconstruct someday, we're trying to avoid special assessment in the future. So you'll see some cities don't charge as big of a fee as we had adopted.
Reconstruct, by that you mean the industrial goes away and we,
No, so
just
one day we'll
rebuilding
have
the
to
system.
reconstruct the water main and the sewer lines.
Okay.
So we want to avoid special assessing those properties in the future, and this was kind of like a first look into how we could do that.
I don't think when we talked about changing the valuation method, it was clear to us what the financial impact was on it, and I totally agree with you that asking somebody to fill out a rebate form after the fact is not the way you should handle it. we should be honing in on what the dollar value and cost is up front, so it's fair and equitable, and the bill is what the bill is at that point. And
How, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I can't believe we would be that far off from what we were charging last year at this time.
I was just gonna ask, how does council feel about the philosophy of trying to accumulate what's needed to replace the infrastructure as it's consumed versus trying to assess future property owners when it has to get reconstructed? In the context of roads, I like this idea in that the road is consumed as people drive on it and live in the area. And whoever happens to buy the house the year before it gets reconstructed gets stuck with the bill from the past 30 years of use. So it makes sense to me that you want to try to distribute it over the lifetime of the asset. That's what they've tried to do. Maybe this isn't the best way to do that. But are we aligned on that as the way we want the policy structured? Such that we're collecting ahead, and when it wears out, we've got the money banked to rebuild it.
I'm okay collecting ahead. I don't wanna fleece these folks.
Well, how does the math
It's
work on
too
this?
much.
If, like, how much, what I would wanna know if you want to pay for something in advance of having it wear out is what the actual costs in the future, maybe we talked about this, but I don't remember, what the cost of reconstruction, like if if what we're trying to reconstruct has a 30-year lifespan, and there are 1,000 people connected to it, and it's gonna it costs in today's dollars $1 million, we would put a figure on 30 years from now as like $5 million, for example. And we'd have to do the math to figure out how much does each participant have to put away for future reconstruction of that particular thing we want to replace. Have we done any of that, or are we just kind of
So-
winging it?
So the reason why we chose SAC unit as a residential equivalent unit, it's, so like just by Z said, it's a universal system that we know. And then typically I believe when you're special assessing properties for the water main and the sewer lines, you're special assessing based on the square footage of lines that you'll have to replace for that property. So the more road that they have along their property, then the more their cost would be.
Yeah.
So if that's a fact, Maggie, and I'm sorry if I don't wanna second guess you, you do a great job for us. When you compare two of the properties that are spending $300, one property has half the frontage as the other one. Why is their bill the same? And I'll use them because it isn't public information. You've got Protec that has a small frontage piece as far as the road goes, and then you've got Lithgow that's sitting on the corner, so you've got two frontages there. Why are their bills almost the same?
So
You only do it based on one frontage, or one. And the piping assessment would be the same as if we were installing new.
Okay.
Those numbers have come out before. But to your comment, I think about the assessment, it's a little bit backwards. You're not paying for the wear on previous use, you're paying for the benefit on future use. That's one of the differences with the assessment. And I can see where assessment, front-end loading it, you may have more people actually sharing that cost of assessment in the future as you develop out those areas versus, trying to collect it up front from a few. But, I don't know, I didn't mean to cut you off.
that's fine. Yeah, thank you for inputting on that.
Were you in the middle of a thought, Dean, or?
No, I'm opening it up, and I know I see Tom's
Yeah.
hand is up, and I may or may not have hit some of the same things he talks about. This is a big event for 3 of our
Yeah.
industrial parks. We're not here to take and fleece and make a move. It's not what we're here for. We're here to do what's right. So I don't know if we.
Yeah,
can
would council like to
listen
hear
them.
from any affected?
Yeah.
Tom, if you'd like to go. You could just state your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
Thank you, Council. Tom Gleason, Protec Auto Repair, 7591 Commerce Street. And the idea of using whack and sack, we've paid that. And that's got nothing to do with this. And that is a maximum of what you could possibly be using. So I'm paying for a maximum, and I'm not using half of what it is. I'm assigned 5 units by Met Council, and I think that takes me to 20,000 gallons. I'm using, under 4 most of the time. I don't see the relevance whatsoever. I take the rate chart from Maple Grove and work it out. Now, I realize there may be an up cost for us, but using what they've got right here, my bill should be $33.09 a month, and I'm paying over $300 now. There's something wrong.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, sewer is not done through Maple Grove, so that's all done through the Met Council, and so.
But they have sewer charges, that's
They
where
have
they get
sewer-
it too.
They have different sewer charges, and we could get some more information on how we got to the initial base rate. But they do just have a little bit different system, so just to note that, but
Right.
Yeah.
I think,
That's including their sewer too. They have 2 separate water and sewer, and I've added them together, and they do it quarterly billing. So simply divided by 3, I come up with $33.09. And if there's an upcharge from them to us, sure, but, and they're on Met Council sewer, the same that we are, so.
yeah, when we set base rates and sewer rates, we have to set it for our system in order to maintain the costs within the system. So the base rates were set up initially to make sure that we could cover our costs for maintaining that infrastructure. But certainly, I think we've heard the concerns and want to take the feedback and try to look at some other options, because it sounds like it's not,
How fast can we look at options though? Because these guys are
I
getting
don't
billed
want to see
monthly.
another bill go out.
and that's something that we could
Yeah,
work
so-
with maybe.
Yep, so finance staff has started looking into different methods, and we can bring that back within the next council or 2 meetings.
But I think a question would be, can we pause billing, is I think one of the questions.
Well,
that they
well,
have. Or
maybe not,
look at-
maybe we can't pause it, but
So if,
because we have to maintain fees that are going outside the city, right? But
Yeah.
we would be able to rebate back for charges we've overcharged if we change the policy.
yeah, so if council wanted to change it back to the way that we were calculating, we can definitely do that and hold off on further changes until we have more research done on different methods that we can use to make it equitable for all property owners.
Are we able to redo the bills for January, February?
Yeah,
Make it
yes.
so we don't need to do a credit application. I want it simplified. I'm old school, very old school, and to take it back to the $70-something and stuff, I think is reasonable, and we visit it differently, and I apologize not paying more attention to the information you
Oh,
gave us in the
no
2
worries.
meetings that we had.
Yeah, so I mean, do we need a motion?
I think we'll
to-
need to we'll have to amend the fee schedule at the next meeting. But we certainly, staff has been directed to look at rebate, going back and reviewing those bills to make changes.
So it seems like we're on this side and you guys are on the other side and we're having this back and forth, but we did approve
I know we did.
so, obviously the intent was not to have the outcome be what it was. And so, sometimes government does things and then they have unintended consequences, so, I hope you forgive us. We'll work on trying to make it more right. I don't know if we'll have it be like perfect where it's 3309. I think we just have to look carefully at what it is and there might be some rationale behind some of it and redo it and check for impact. But I don't know will it be a problem to say, oh, we're gonna unwind everything that happened the beginning of the year? Or do we,
I mean,
or do we figure out what we actually wanna do and then correct the math later?
I think we could do either. I think we could pause and make a change to, we'll need to make a change to the ordinance either way, so it might make sense to go back to allow us to continue to build and then bring forward a
new
different
solution.
policy.
Because we had a problem of not accounting for the fact that the infrastructure is gonna wear out, right? That's why we did it in the first place.
Part of it is we've been talking about doing a residential equivalent unit, and we didn't have that defined anywhere in the ordinance, and it was on the fee schedule that we were charging per unit. So it was an attempt to try to make sure that we are covering for the base fees for those future costs that we're going to have. As you pointed out, it's not a perfect science.
Yeah.
We had a recommendation and it's not working quite the way we had anticipated. And so we definitely want to make sound financial decisions, but also want to make sure to treat our residents and business owners appropriately. So I think this is a chance to relook at the policy we brought forward and make improvements. And we always want to make improvements for our community.
A couple more things. I just can't believe these other cities that have had sewer for 50 years can be that far off, that now we've figured it out and it needs to be this much. And I do not like the idea of filling out a credit application that just tells me you can say, I want no more credits, and we're right back where we were. So, I guess really that's about it. It's ridiculous. And then there's just a handful of us that are paying these higher rates. What the heck? And you will account for people that are using a lot of water you're charged so much for every 1,000 gallons you use. That's how you get that. You don't need whack and sack. That's done with. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay. So, staff have the direction they need?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Go on to new business, which is items 10A and 10B. We'll have a public comment opportunity for both here at the start, which is financial assistance request for pitch to pitch and Corcoran locker plant site discussion.
And we do have the 3 additional.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. As well as 10C, D, and E, which are,
The letter of
Go over them,
support
thank
for
you.
Hanover is 10C. The community project funding authorization for the city of Corcoran is 10D. And then 10E is an update on House File 2235.
perfect, thank you. So we'll go ahead and have that public comment opportunity for
Anyone in the audience? We'll have opportunities there to, some folks in the audience who are related to the items. We'll have you come up at those times, but anyone else in the audience who wants to speak can come and state your name and address for the record. Otherwise, anyone joining us virtually can press *9 if you're on a phone, or if you're on an other electronic device, you can press reactions and raise your hand. Mayor and council, at this time, no one is raising their hand.
Okay, we'll go right into item 10A.
Perfect. Mayor and council, we did receive a request from Pitch to Pitch to talk about potential uses and options related to a baseball campus, and CJ with Pitch to Pitch is here and really would be able to talk about the request that he's looking for.
Perfect, thank you. And TJ, we'll hand it over to you. I guess I'm not too sure what the request is, so I'll let you kind of take it away and we'll take it.
Yeah, no problem. CJ Woodrow, Pitch to Pitch. I just want to thank you for the time. This is basically an extension of what I had a meeting with Jess and some other outside councils. We're trying to get more fact-finding so we can put together a full, plan for you guys to review before we come to you guys with what we're looking to do. We wanna make sure we can dot and cross everything, so this is more of the diligence process. Just thought it would be a great idea to be able to talk to you guys about other options that maybe you guys have thought of that our smaller group discussion didn't encapsulate. So other ideas with the idea of what we're looking to build with the athletic fields and the indoor field house, but also in conjunction with your mixed-use plan and light industrial plan within the comp plan for the northeast corridor. So just trying to understand if there's other options or other things that the city of Corcoran is potentially able to join with us in as far as how we construct it or build it or finance it or other things for kind of a shared partnership versus just pure private financing. Just wanted to understand all the options with the city of Corcoran and potential development, partnering and financing. So just trying to understand if there's anything else that maybe we didn't think of, is, because we know we can't TIF it, because it's farmland, it's not a, dilapidated area or anything like that. Tax abatements, the general things were covered. I just didn't know if there's anything else that the council thought of or knew of that would be in a partnership with financing such a larger development of a mixed-use combination. I was just trying to get some more information from you guys.
Gotcha, Jess, you have.
Well, I was just gonna add, we had talked about, TIF is not available as an option. Tax abatement could potentially, be used as an option. We talked about that, when Tammy, Amdahl was here with the Hope Community, their concept plan. And so it's something we certainly could look into, if council was
Did we
interested
vote? We
in.
voted against.
On that one.
Yeah.
Yes, you did, so, certainly, if, any feedback you have on financial options, or anything that you wanna provide, to CJ, I think it will help him create, a better, application if, when.
Yeah, so over the last, just to give you guys a quick update, over the last 5-6 months, we've been meeting with many people, our users, our partners, our sponsors, all of our people that are kind of to the forefront. We don't want to present and come to you guys with our concept plan and look at zoning options and all that until we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed. We want to make sure we know all the options before we present it. So just looking at more things in our diligence process as we're in the capital phase now. We understand what the costs are for the most part. We understand the timelines. We understand all the different permitting processes and zoning things that we're going to need to go through for the timing of this. But before we present it, we just wanted to take a quick opportunity and say, is there anything else we haven't looked at to see, is there another way to help with financing so that we can potentially expedite that to get it to become realized quicker?
Gotcha.
That's all we're looking at.
Nothing jumps to my mind, honestly, outside of what we've discussed. That
We talked about this last week,
Okay.
or last 2 weeks ago. I don't know, I can go first if you.
Sure.
Well, first I'll say I love baseball. That's my favorite sport. All kids should play baseball. You never know who can throw a 90-mile-an-hour fastball and make a living doing it. So every single kid should play baseball. Historically speaking, Corcoran has never, to my knowledge, has not done a public-private partnership. And I would advocate against it. And the reason why is because, well, there are lots of reasons why, but I feel like if you wanted to buy 80 acres and develop it and have a complex and do all these things, it sounds awesome. I hope you do it. But I'm not on board with using the citizen tax money to do it. I'm not a big fan of mixing private and public investment in that manner. I think oftentimes the private users benefit and they privatize the gains and publicize any potential losses or costs. Especially it seems like sports facilities get pitched as a great community asset and then they end up being, my kids play sports. Every facility is booked 24 hours a day. And they don't, and especially baseball fields, people don't play baseball anymore like they used to. So it'd kind of be like a city putting money towards something that the private clubs would use and
I wouldn't, I don't like that. I don't like the idea of it. I wouldn't, and I would say the same thing about every other potential investment or every potential business. We try our best to let businesses run and not get the government's hand in different business ventures. So I'm sorry. Love the idea, but I would not support Corcoran putting money into it.
Give me a head nod. Or-
Did we ever get a staff report on any type of concept?
We have
No.
not yet seen a sketch plan or a preliminary or final
So
plat for this.
I will add, for anybody in Corcoran, I love that you came and talked to us before you put hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars into a
First part's right, second part is not. I haven't spent the money yet, but the hours, yes.
No, I know, and so like coming here with an idea or a concept or a napkin plan, other cities will probably do what you're wanting us to do. So, hopefully those hours aren't bad hours, but everyone else, I implore people, come and talk to us about plans before you put your heart and soul into it. I wish more people did what you did, or what you're doing. So anyway, sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, for me, it's hard to give any comment on financing when I don't know anything about your plan other than really what's on this sheet of paper, right, and we talked about, so I can't give you any guidance in that regard. I'd have to know what we're talking about, what the impact would be, and what the financial benefit could be back to the city. So, for that reason, I'm sorry, I can't really say
Appreciate it.
anything.
No, like when I met with Mayor McKean, it was the whole thing. I wanted to make sure we ask before we do. So we want to make sure this is something that would even be desired, be welcomed. Because if we don't do that first, it doesn't make sense. Then you're just pushing against the wall. I fully expect no government financing or taxpayer money. I just know that other examples from doing our research around the country and being at all those complexes, a lot of cities do go out and request for public-private development for the use of their citizens and then also private use. And so I wanted to ask, because if I didn't ask, I didn't know. And so it's you never know until you ask. It's kind of my philosophy on that, so I figured the answer is no. I hear no all the time, that's totally fine. We're still working on all the other options and all the other financing. I wanted to see if there were options. So I will be back with more things to come in the coming months. Like I said, we're in the capital phase now. We have all the planning, all the different designs, all the different ideas, and all the user groups accounted for. It's literally a matter of how do we do the capital structure to get this thing to present to you before we know what we want to do.
Makes sense. Me?
I was there with you. I love your enthusiasm, your everything. You had a whole nother place planned out, and out of a crazy moment, I directed you where you went and such. I don't think you could have a better landowner to deal with. The money side of things, I was part of Maple Grove and that whole downtown and the community center and those kind of things. It was worked out and owned by the city, and it worked. It was supposed to be paid off and done in 8 to 10 years, and that Parks Director got it done and paid back in full with all the uses and those kind of things. But it was community focused, not focused on the private side of things. So you had a lot of conversation, you talked about the sharing of, and it would be a positive schedule. I would love to see more of that and understand, but it's real hard for me to put or recommend that we put any of our money into something like that, especially if it's driven by the private sector. So
I would agree, but I think we're all looking forward to see
it would be great.
the plans you come up with and see more about it and learn more about it for sure, about the facility itself, so.
No problem. You'll be seeing more of me. I just
Great.
wanted to make sure I asked. If I didn't ask, I would ask why I didn't ask, so.
Absolutely.
Thank you, CJ.
Totally
Thank you for your
reasonable.
time, guys.
Thank you.
Never appreciate it.
We figured that out this week. Okay, on to 10B, which is discussion on the Corcoran locker plant site, meat locker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Staff was actually approached by two folks related to selling the property at the Corcoran Locker Plant, and really they had some very specific questions for council as they're trying to figure out what the next steps are for the land. Really, does the city want to consider permitting on-site animal slaughtering as a permitted use? And then does the city have any interest in acquiring the property as part of the adjacent city park? Those were really the big questions that were asked of staff. And so Natalie put together a staff report that outlines some of the site nonconformities, the surrounding properties. With nonconformities, once you've ended a use, you only have 365 days to continue the use. So if we do want to move down that route from nonconformity basis, there's some limitations on that. Want to know if council wants to make changes to the ordinance related to, we need to make some changes to the ordinance to allow continuing of on-site slaughtering. So just really want to get some feedback from council on if there are options that, on those two questions, if we want to continue those items, or if we want to look at selling.
And did you want to say anything?
Yeah, Dan.
If you could come up to the mic and name and address first would be great.
Dan and Katie Goman, 2925 Wacola Avenue South, St. Louis Park. So Katie is Joe Andrews' daughter, the executor of his estate, which includes the Corcoran Locker Plant. So I think the staff report is outlined really well, and we're trying to figure out our options. We've had several interested parties approach. The big question is the on-site animal slaughtering to continue the business the way it is currently used.
Several parties approach wanting to continue the business like that?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Continue using it
Yes,
as it is.
similar businesses,
No.
slaughtering meat lockers, in surrounding areas.
Gotcha.
If I can ask one question, but not stay within the family, you would
Sell
sell?
We're kind of exploring all options.
Okay. Perfect.
We are not certain that it would stay in the family. And really trying to gather information at this point.
Gotcha.
Good job.
First off, I wanted to say sorry for your guys' loss.
Very.
It's a big loss.
Big loss. It left a big hole in the community. He's a great guy. But,
Thank you.
of course.
If I can
Yeah.
start out, yeah, this is hard, but I'll get through it. That business has been huge for our community. To continue it on, if it's owned by family, I know once businesses change hands and those kind of things, everything then needs to turn and conform. But in my mind, what that does and the hole it has created for many of our local farmers and those kind of things, it's a huge opening in our community and in our hearts and such. I would be in full support as just open the doors and continue on if family was involved. And to keep that same business, I don't know if everybody else agrees with me, but it's needed. It is a huge hole. I'll speak off of private. I had the opportunity many times for Joe to slaughter a cow that I would buy and do, and did a great job. Everything was good. This year, with COVID and everything that's happening and what people are doing and how they're changing, my cow grew another 400 more pounds than what it was because it had to wait 4 months for a location and a locker plant to accept it in. We've got farmers out there desperate to continue their business and what they were doing, and if it stayed in the family, I would love it if I could just say, bless it and keep it as the same ordinances, the same conditional use, whatever it is just a family member on it. Outside, I don't know if I could support it, but that's me.
I think I'm on the same page.
Well, for me, I may be open up to even having another owner come in and run it. Because to me, you go into a lot of rural communities,
Yeah.
butcher shop is the center of the community, right? That's where people gravitate to. And it was a great amenity. I can't tell you how many quarter cows we purchased out of it.
You got it.
And it's a big loss. And I'd be willing to work around a lot of these issues that are around it if we could get somebody in there running a similar operation to what Joe did.
Cool.
I think there'd just be maybe a couple things that we want to make sure to work with you guys or any potential future buyer with regarding like some of the parking issues
Yeah.
and stuff that just would probably hadn't reviewed in a long time, and would just want to make sure that they have the space and know what goes where and everything with that site, because it is a tight site. But yeah, I think it's things that we'd all do what we can to try to make work. At least I would, and I think that's what you guys were saying.
If it is okay, I would open it up to keeping the same business and working with a new owner and stuff. I'd be wide open to that also. It is a huge void.
If you're, I don't disagree with the idea of trying to maintain it in the community. Is this the best place for it? I mean, I'd be open to having the city acquire it and make it part of City Park as well, if that's a desirable option. It's a great location. We've talked about wanting to have a place for the holiday parade to end, have a Christmas tree lighting. It's central on, two high-traffic streets and kind of a point there, so it's a natural focal area. I'd be open to that as well, in addition to other options.
Yeah.
My worry about that is though, then you have the 1050 Club. So are we gonna acquire both properties? Because 1050 Club, my guess is, has similar situations, don't they, as far as parking and variances and everything
Yeah.
else? And
Yes.
they've been out of
Likely would.
operation, so if you're gonna do one, you're almost
You may
gonna
end
be
up
doing
doing both.
two, and now you're dealing with, what are we paying for these things?
Well, I think that's
I'd
something we
rather
have
have
to
it
get
as a
into a closed
business,
session.
it becomes valuable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fair enough. But I think, to your point, if that was something we wanted to explore more, then we'd do that in a future closed session, I believe.
Yes, if council would like to move forward, or if we got an offer
Right,
to.
which that would be the way to-
Likely it would be, we'd like to consider purchasing it, and then we could take direction to go get any appropriate appraisals or consider an offer. But we certainly could continue that in the future, and it might be something that we consider.
Gotcha.
Did staff report say that there was potential for external funding for that as well? If it was agreeable to both sides?
Say that again, I missed.
Did staff report say there was an opportunity for outside funding for that as well? If there was potential for grants or?
Potential, if there were items like economic or environmental cleanup on site, we'd have to explore it a bit more in order to understand if there would be those items. And that would be part of potentially the sale, is that we might identify that through, any title work. Sometimes those kind of, or any site inspections, sometimes you'll see those kind of things come up. But something certainly that if we were approached on purchasing, that would be definitely an option for us if we wanted to go down that road, or if you wanted us to explore that, we could certainly do that.
Yeah, I think that would be something that if you guys came to us wanting to explore that option or, you know, wanting us to look into purchasing it, then we'd have to have that discussion at that point. But, which, you know, potentially there is some interest and we'd have to see, you know, the devil's in the details there. But, in terms of what we were talking about before with continuing the use and trying to find a way around some of the other issues with the site and variances and stuff, it sounds like there's pretty broad support for.
I want to get, I don't want to vote or take action on that.
Sure.
Quite yet. So I've gone to center cut meets in Rogers, and I feel like I'm cheating on Joe every time I walk in there. It feels terrible. There are specifics in here I think we should address.
Sure.
Like, if you have people that are interested in buying it, there are things such as, are they gonna need, like, the buyer is gonna wanna know some specific things from us, I think. So there are specific, like, we'll work, we want that to remain, obviously, we'd love it if the family ran it. But I don't think we can design a path that only the family can, like, there's some laws around that we can only have these conditions if the family continues to run it. So I want to be careful about that. But there are some actual things that you're going to want to know, like the business side of this stuff. It's hard to talk about business when it's someone like you guys, but they probably are going to need to hook to city services, right? The new owners would probably need to do that. That would be something we'd need.
Yep.
There are some other things in here, like would they still be able to have a variance on parking? Would the county be okay with, we're not the county, but they have grandfathered in rules with the county and setbacks off 10 and 50. We just ran into the problem, or running into the problem with the old Napa of being able to keep the building but not expand it. I think you'd want to know what if you change ownership, does that change the ability to stay on as 10 and 50 as close as you are? Would they need to bring it, which of the codes are, if that building, if we started fresh, because essentially we'd be kind of starting fresh, because I don't think they'd be grandfathered into some of the exceptions on some of the rules. They would have to come into compliance with some of these codes. Like, I think we're all willing to work. We want it to be something kind of like it was. But we may not have the ability to override it.
Entirely.
Yeah, so we want to be careful about setting expectations for the new potential owners, or if you want to continue. You don't want to go to somebody advertising a meat locker and have us not, and say, oh, the city council, they really want this to stay in business, and they really want it to happen. They said that they'll work with you, but I think we want to be more specific on the things that we would be okay with. And I don't know if I have enough data to know which specific variances we would need to think about and have.
Yeah.
Because a buyer isn't gonna just take our word for it that we really want it and we want it to happen. So I would like more details as to which specific things would be needed to be brought up to code. And some things we wouldn't be, like, we can't override everything. There are tons of times as council, we're like, we really want to do this, but we get hamstrung by some things that we have to do as council. So we want to know what we have to do. We want to know what we want to do, and then I think we want to know what we are prepared to allow. I think, because that will give a potential buyer like very clear directive as to the things that they can and can't do with the site. And I think also we would want to be able to give you some, and I'm like the rest of them where, I think it'd be great to buy it. That was one of the considerations, but always it depends on, you know, if you wanted $1 billion for it, then we would have less of an appetite to buy it. So it's all the devil's in the details, but as a whole, I think I would love to have that be a legacy of the town, either in its existing format in some way, and I would like to offer a little bit more clarity on the things that we can actually do, and then, I'd be open to hearing about having that be something that we buy.
Yeah.
Might be outside the box, too far outside the box. Is it possible to do a land swap for other city property? And is there a city property that would be zoned and in a more amenable location? Where there would be room for parking and that sort of thing?
So I'd have to double look at the zoning map.
I don't think we'd have a zone that would not need some changes.
Right now, most of our city, I'd have to look at that. I think, anywhere, part of what Natalie mentioned is that there's just it's not allowed in code right now, so we'd need to make some changes to the commercial, some of the commercial requirements for that. So we'd likely, if we do want to continue, we'd need to do that. But in terms of the land, potential land swap, we could look at options if there are any pieces of land that might be.
Maybe that's something for you guys to think about, if that's something you'd like to consider as well, and let us know. It doesn't have to be tonight or anything.
Could you do that with tax forfeited land though?
We wouldn't be able to do it with anything that would be tax forfeited, so we'd have to look at
Yeah, I don't know how that would work.
the
Yeah.
balance of what if there are any pieces that aren't tax forfeited, that we either purchased or were given to us in not the tax forfeited avenue. But certainly something that we could explore. And we'd have to, City Attorney Thames is
Yes.
not, he's on vacation today, so we'd have to do.
It's not a tonight
do
conversation
some
anyway.
digging, but certainly something that we could ask the question of what would all need to be entailed on that. And we certainly could look at options though, and bring back. It sounds like we want to get some more details, and thank you, probably having Natalie be available to discuss would be a good option. I think one of the questions with something like this, is this something that we want to continue with city funds to continue to explore, or if this is something that we'd take an escrow for or anything like that, is just in general, as a general question that staff would likely have, is something that you would like us to continue with the cities?
To me, that's tough, because
budget?
it's not certain what the scope of the request or the research is gonna be. You guys
I think as far as like code and zoning changes, that should probably be an escrowed item. But if it's pursuant to the city expanding its park, that seems like it's more of a fair ask for it to be staff supported.
Yeah, if we go down that part, there would have to be an offer on the table
Right.
first.
I'm not that comfortable asking for escrow in this very peculiar situation. Or particular situation.
At least for
The initial, what
View of it.
codes are, the initial, like, what do we need to, what are things that are out of code at this time, the things that have variability and the things that don't.
We should know
Fair.
that and
I'm-
not have to charge.
I think that's
agree.
fair.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's
So
unique
maybe
circumstance.
For the next staff report,
Yes,
we won't, I'll work with Natalie to.
and we can evaluate at that point.
To further define this, I think she tried to outline some of the key areas, but maybe do a deeper
In-depth,
dive
yeah.
onto this particular site. We just generally try to make sure that we don't move forward with something that we
Yep.
don't have council support on using
Mhm.
staff resources.
Yep.
So we
I
certainly
think you
can-
got that support to do that, the next step, and then we'll
Yeah,
assess.
and I want to caveat it, but by making sure that they actually want more information before we actually do it.
Great
That is
question.
why we're here.
Okay.
We do want that information.
Okay,
So,
fair enough.
Yeah, we don't wanna sell a lemon, we need to know those answers, so we appreciate that.
I think staff has the
I
direction.
think
they
we
need.
have some direction to proceed, and it might take us, we might need some additional information from you folks, and we'll, might need to work through some of the questions that we have, so it might take a little bit of time, but I'll work with Natalie to reach out to you, and we can come up with a timeline for when to bring it back to council.
And I think, if you go outside there by the front desk, my card's top left. I think the rest of the council has a card in the bottom left there, so feel free to grab that and reach out to any of us. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
John, thanks for grounding us a little bit. Very much.
Yeah. Okay, last couple added items. 10C is the letter of support requested from the city of Hanover.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We did get a request from the City of Hanover to support their project. They're looking at moving forward through the community project funding, similar to the funding that we received for the water supply project. They're looking at some improvements to the County Road 19 intersection, specifically related to 117 and County Roads 123 and 10 and 203. So,
Can I make a motion to approve?
Yep. Second. Any further discussion? All
Be
those.
great to get roundabouts there.
Where are you putting it?
Just might have.
That's what they're
Yeah,
after.
that might be what they're doing, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
If they get the funding, I think that probably would be. So, okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. 10D, community funding request for city park
yes.
authorization.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We received this week information that they're similar to the request Hanover is looking at. We got our deadline this week from our local representatives.
Representative Phillips.
Representative Phillips for submitting an application if we do want to seek any sort of funding for another community project. And so just asking that council, if we do want to move forward with it, staff would recommend City Park as potentially our next project to seek funding for. We did get some funding in the last round, so I'm not sure that we're guaranteed anything, but if we don't at least try, we're not going to get the money. So staff recommends putting forward an application and creating a letter of support similar to what the City of Hanover did.
What would the timing be for that one?
What do you mean?
Would it mean we would delay actually beginning the project?
I mean, we could have money to do the project.
But we were talking about potentially bonding for the project too. That's my question.
We pushed bonding, didn't we, this year?
Yes,
that,
we did.
yes.
We have not bonded for it, but we'd likely know. We don't
Based
have a
on
great
last year.
timeline on, they knew in September one year and we didn't find out until December
Yeah.
the following year. So we're thinking of bidding that over the winter ideally. As we finalize that final design, we'll have a better bid date. But it could push funding a little bit, or the need to bond potentially.
But if it's pushing it at a certain point, we're in winter and we're not doing anything anyway until the spring.
I think.
I mean, is this near term? That was my question. Is this gonna be something that we hear about in the next?
I think.
By the
that
end of the year?
We would hear by the end of the year based on, we know in the next month and a half if we've proceeded to get to the appropriations committees. So we would know, within the next couple of months if they brought it, that far forward. And then the next step would just be getting it signed into law.
We would, yeah, to that point, we would know relatively quickly if we got cut out of the, so basically each representative and senator can submit a list of, and the rule might be changing, but I think before it was 15 projects. That's what we were selected on last year. So if we didn't get that, we'd know right away that it's not going forward, then we'd know that in the next few months and be able to go forward with a different route if we wanted.
Okay.
And if we did get on it, we'd have a better chance of potentially actually getting it, and then I think it'd be worth seeing it out.
Okay.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to authorize staff to submit the application for community funding for City Park.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. And then 10E is an item that I asked to be added. If you have something.
I was just gonna, note that it's related to the legalizing,
Yes.
affordable housing.
Yep, so it's essentially the same bill that we talked about last year at a few meetings and a few commission meetings that we were pretty concerned about. If you remember, we submitted the resolution supporting local control and decision-making and against them changing that. Same author, mostly same bill with a couple changes, maybe for the worse, was introduced in the House on the 7th and passed the Housing Committee. It's House File 2235, I believe.
Yes.
So I just suggest anyone look that up and read through it. There's a lot of provisions that would have massive implications for every city, but particularly for cities like us that are, have a lot of development going on, and it would kind of change everything from park dedication to other fees to density, changing the minimum to 4 units an acre, and 25% of your single-family home zoned area would have to be a minimum of 8 units per acre. No aesthetic mandates, no garage sizes, it goes on and on and on. So obviously, it's a bill that we've talked about before, and we're concerned about. I have expressed that to both our House and our Representative Robin.
Who both get no vote. Or whose votes don't matter.
Well, except for, this is a weird situation where this bill, and it was last year and it continues to be this year, it's not going along party lines. It's kind of a weird subsect of a handful of Republicans and a handful of Democrats are very strong for it, and a handful of Republicans and a handful of Democrats are very strong against it. So it's harder to predict. And there's a chance that maybe they do have some say in that very narrow
Okay, fair.
situation.
Fair point.
But yeah, otherwise I would agree with you.
It was a Republican and Democrat that put the bill forward in the first place, if I remember right.
Last year, yeah,
Yes.
it was a Democrat in the House, and my guess would be the Senate companion is introduced by a Republican.
Yeah.
My guess would be Drahan, but
Who was in the builders'
yes,
corner of
absolutely.
all cities are evil if they charge builders any fees to build houses on.
Mhm. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So anyway, just wanted to make you guys aware of it. I'll certainly keep you posted if there's developments with it, if it passes more committees, or if I get any sense of where it's going. And wanted to make the public aware of it. So please take a moment to look it up if you get a chance. And
Call your people.
yes, please. And I will, if it continues to progress, I will do my best to get contact information available out to the public to be able to reach out to their representative or representatives that are hearing these bills, so.
I did attend the city, the League of Minnesota's City Day on the Hill, and they did talk about this with, there was 240 representatives, mayors, council members, other city staff members there, and did talk about the big impact that this would have to communities. So it's definitely something that the League of Minnesota Cities and other city groups are looking at, just the impact to cities like ours with local control.
I think part of the problem is that they've specified it's only the 7 core metro counties that are affected. So there's not a natural inclination for
For some of the
outstanding
provisions,
cities.
not for all of the provisions, but the worst of them. But yeah, it's a fair point that maybe they don't have as much of a vested interest in seeing that change. I don't know. It'll be another interesting dynamic.
They've divided a natural voting block, or made it.
Yeah, potentially. That's why it's tricky to see how it's gonna go forward. It's less predictable, which is a little scarier. But
You can always update the comprehensive plan.
We can always cease development.
well, I mean, there's so many changes that if this bill were to pass as it is, I don't know how you wouldn't do something like that for a while to figure out how
You'd have to
to
have a
operate.
moratorium.
In my opinion, yeah. I mean.
The existing people that live in our town would be so screwed.
Yeah, and just how we operate in the city would have to drastically change overnight, and that would take time to be able to do properly, so, I don't know, yeah. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, if we get to it, hopefully we don't. Okay, and with that we have a staff report, 11A 2022 code enforcement report.
Just item in here, we hadn't done an update on where we were with code enforcement, so we had our Natalie and the group.
I sort of asked for it.
You did.
So thank you.
It was a
Yes.
great reminder from Counselor Bottomott that we hadn't done an update on these, so I've put into our schedule that we'll be doing a more regular update. But just a chance to review that we continue to see code complaints, and we are still investigating and moving those through the process. Courts are still backed up as we're seeing, and they do take a lot of time, but we are still attempting to make progress on the code violations. I've not forgotten.
Perfect. There's nothing else, I will.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you
on-
can.
What's the difference between parking nuisance violation and an inoperable vehicle violation?
Off the top of my head, I can't. Have to double check
Okay.
the difference.
Parking
There
nuisance
might
would just be a car stuck
be-
on the road for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be more like parking in
Yeah, I'd have
a place
to-
that we don't allow it, like in a certain part of the yard or whatever, versus a actual inoperable vehicle that cannot move.
Yeah. Yes, I think some of it is related to potentially those items that can move that aren't supposed to be stored in a
Oh, so
particular location.
one may be more towards the vehicle and the other could be like some other type of just junk, trailer or whatnot?
Yes, I think there could be a junk car versus a trailer that's in the front yard that's parked, sideways and in the setbacks where it's not supposed to be. So I'd have to double check the.
Parking on your
language,
lawn or
but
something like
yeah,
that?
it's items related to that. Likely those ones are able to move, they just are incorrectly
Right.
parking.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Recording stopped.
9:17, not bad.